Before he was the host of his own talk show, Steve Wilkos was the buff but quiet former Marine and law enforcement officer keeping everyone safe on the wild set of the Jerry Springer Show. Steve soon became Jerry's guest host before being offered his own talk show in, I can't believe this, 2007. The Steve Wilkos Show has just begun its impressive 19th season. Check local listings for airtimes and dates, and shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. His show addresses hard topics like domestic violence, substance abuse, and of course, my personal favorite, true crime. Steve Wilkos, welcome to the show. And I can't believe we've never crossed paths before.
That's kind of crazy if they're 31 straight years on TV. You think that would
Yeah.
happen?
And especially coming out of like when my mom had her daytime talk show, like that we never
Yeah.
crossed paths. I'm just gonna jump right in. So we knew you first as the bodyguard on the Jerry Springer Show. First of all, how did you get that job? Were you personal security for Jerry? Were you studio
No.
security and then it just sort of blew up?
So I was working as a Chicago police officer at that time, and a buddy of mine who he runs my security now, Mike McDermott, he had been working on Springer through Pinkerton Security Services, and they needed so when Springer needed extra security, they would call Pinkerton. Pinkerton would hire these off-duty cops. Well, they needed an extra guy one day. They asked me to do it. I said, yeah. I didn't know who Jerry Springer was, didn't know anything about him, didn't never saw the show. So I went there one day to do security, and I did it. Nothing memorable. I went the one day, thought that was it, and but they liked me, and so whenever they did need security, I was one of the guys they called. Well, the guy that was running it, this off-duty sheriff, one day I don't even know what the story was, but he got fired, and I was standing right at the desk at this producer that would hire the security, and he looked up at me and he said, "Hey, do you want to run security here?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I got rid of all his guys. I brought all my guys in, and and then it just took off from there.
When did you become on air?
94.
And did they just say, "Hey, do you wanna
They
be on
just said,
air?"
"Well,
Head to
no,
hair and
like
makeup?
no, because it was like we were there, and then we weren't really part of the show back then because it was before the big shift towards the love triangles and all that. So they liked me, and the executive producer came up to them to say, "Yeah, we'd like you here full time." I said, "Great, I'd like to be here full time." So they figure out whatever they were going to pay me, and then the show took its wild turn, and then I was on the show all the time. So probably around '97 now, the show exploded, and they came to me and said, "We're going to give you a TV contract." Um, and it was more money than I ever imagined I was going to make. I mean, we're not talking $1 million or anything like that, but I was making $55,000 a policeman, and I think the first contract I signed for Springer was 75,000. So that was a lot of money back in 1994, and it was a lot more than I was making as a policeman. So it was great, and then the show really just kept exploding, and the ratings were going crazy, and then it came back and it doubled my pay. And I mean, it was like a dream to me, man, because I didn't know how long it was going to last, but I was like, wow, this is really great. And I figured, well, I'm going to do this, write it out as far as I can, but I'm going to be a policeman, and this is going to put a lot of money in the bank, but it just never ended.
How did you go home and say to your wife, "Honey, I'm pivoting in my career"?
Well, what happened was I met my wife on the Springer Show. So
Wait, what did she do at Springer?
she came down from Detroit. She was working at a local morning show up there. They brought her down. She started as assistant producer or whatever. And so we were friends for a couple of years. She started 95, I started 94. And then in 1997, we started dating, and then we got married in 2000. So she kind of had a meteoric rise too, because she started as an assistant producer. And next thing you know, she was co-exec producer. And then she took over as the EP of Springer and my show. So they didn't. So the guy who she replaced on Springer, he left, and he was running my show and the Springer Show. Well, when he left, they uh, they didn't want to give my wife both shows. They just wanted to give her Springer and not mine. They said, "Well, we're going to bring these other guys in. You decide who you want." Well, the one guy they wanted me to pick, I said, "Okay." He was very vanilla. I didn't, but he wasn't a bad guy. So I said, "Okay, I'll go with that guy." Well, for whatever reason, he turned down the job. So in the meantime, my wife was doing my show too, and they I said to him, and as she was doing my show, my ratings were going up, and it was season two of my show. This was in 2008. So I talked to the president of NBC at the time, and I said, "Well, look what my wife's doing with my show. I want her too." And so they gave her to me, and then she did both shows, Springer and my show. And then in like 2015, I think, she came to me and said, "I'm only going to do your show. I'm not going to do Jerry anymore because our kids were getting older." And she was like, "I want to spend more time at home." And I said, "Great. I don't think Jerry's going to be happy, but I'm real happy." So she talked to Jerry, and then she just did my show. But we've been on the Springer show.
Okay, see, and this I did not know, but it reminds me, and it's not always easy, like when I was the executive producer of Fashion Police and my mother was the star of Fashion Police, and there were definitely disagreements, and we had very different ways of dealing with them. How did you okay, my mom could leave it in the studio, and I would get in the car and still be fuming, fuming, and she would be like, "Ugh, why? Why are this is ridiculous, let it go." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go to frickin' HR again because of you." And first of all, the whole relationship now would be an HR nightmare. Let's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
back in the day, you could do that stuff.
yeah,
How did you guys navigate that? Because it is not always I speak from experience.
yeah. I think I learned a really. I had a lot of good training from Jerry, and Jerry never tried to be a producer, right? I think a lot of times with these shows, you have problems when EPs want to be the talent and the talent wants to be the producers, right? So I think a lot of EPs, and whether they want them in or not, they sit back there and they want to be the star. Like, "Oh, I could do that. I want to be the star." And then they start shooting themselves sitting over at the podium and all that. Because I've seen it too many times, and I've seen a lot of hosts say, "No, we need to do it this way." Well, I'm not a producer. I mean, I'm lucky I'm a talk show host. Let's face it. So I really stayed out of her way. I really kind of said, "You tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it." Now, there were a lot of times I didn't want to do what she wanted me to do, and I expressed my feelings, but I learned real soon to just do what she wanted me to do, even if I didn't want to do it. And she was right. Like, it worked. Like, I'm like, "Oh, this isn't going to work." And it did work. So now, after all these years, I never question it. If she says, "We're doing this," I do it. And, it usually is the right call.
But it is hard to go home like that.
Well, we are extremely lucky because we've been working together, like I said, for 30 years now. And we've really, and it wasn't something we planned, but we just said, we're not going to talk about the show when we get home. And we didn't. We just kept it separate. And even now, like my wife does a lot, especially after the pandemic, she would do a lot of interviewing from the home, and she's got a home officer. I don't listen to her. She goes down to her office. I don't know anything's going on. She doesn't want me hearing things that are going on because she wants me to go into the show fresh, not knowing anything. So it really does work for us. And truthfully, when I was a policeman, I really had to turn it off when I came home because when I was working as a policeman, you know, I saw really horrible things,
Oh, yeah.
and I I had to shut my brain off so that I wouldn't spiral out of control or lose my sanity. So I've always been really good at that. And it was easy when I got home. I had little kids when I had my show, and it was easy to escape into them, being dad and just playing and being with my kids. So I've been very fortunate with that.
Apparently, the person who was producing your show that you were starring in didn't have an obsession with Bed Bath& and Beyond and placemats that she always insisted on stopping on the way
I
home.
think you're
Well
wrong about that.
well, I was white knuckling the steering wheel and figuring out can I reach over and open the door and push her out? So we've had a different experience. I want to pivot back to Jerry and the craziness that ensued on set. I mean, we've all seen the documentaries. It literally, you didn't even need a match to start a fire. One thing, did you guys have a code word that, like, okay, now's the time to step in, now's the time to wait, let it go, don't let the I mean, there has to be some sort of communication.
That part was really hard because, you know, and it would drive me crazy because it was, let's face it, the fights are what propelled us into being a very popular show. But I was getting pulled in a million different directions because I was the head of security, but I really was kind of like the stage manager, like kind of controlling all the chaos on stage. And it was hard because if we had really good fights, everybody got scared. They're like, oh my God, somebody's going to get hurt. We're going to get canceled. And then if people weren't fighting, it was like, why aren't they fighting? And then I'm like, hey, man, what is it? You want fights or you don't want fights? Like, so there was no code word or anything, but I kind of had to use my best instinct of, okay, let them get a couple shots in and then we'll break it up. Now, if I saw somebody just, mismatched, I got in there quickly. But if it was even, let them tag each other a little bit. Just like policemen, you don't just go break up the fight right away. You kind of let them tire themselves out, and then you're going from behind. So it was the same concept with stage. And then there was some guests that maybe I disliked a little bit, and I really took my time. You know what I mean?
That
So
is hilarious. Let him get one more in.
yeah, so I'm like, yeah, I don't like that guy. Let him take a few licks.
By the way, you know that that's called producing.
Yeah, I guess it is, but I just kind of I rolled with the punches, and like I said, I'd be come on, Steve, somebody's gonna get hurt, and then it's like, oh, they're not fighting, give them the fight, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not, if they fight, they fight. If they don't fight, I'm not making anybody fight. You know what I mean?
Isn't it a crazy thing when you step back and go, I can't believe I know all this?
My wife always says, she goes, you were real natural. She goes, you just had impeccable timing. You kind of knew the flow of the show. And she said after I left, the Springer show never had that again. And I mean, maybe that's true because that's why I was so good. I ended up getting my own show, but it was a very delicate balance of controlling the chaos on stage because honestly, you don't want anybody to get hurt.
No.
You wanted action and you wanted chaos on stage because that's what people tune into.
So I want to go back to getting your own show. At one point, you started guest hosting. How did that happen, and who decided to say, "Let's give you, you know, the wheel for a day or two and see
Well,
what
I was
happens?"
doing segments, I think, just to fill in and like kind of like filling time at them certain shows. You back end the show with a Steve segment where I would go out in the field, I'd help somebody or something like that. But the real catalyst to getting me my own show was Jerry went on Dancing with the Stars in 2005, and uh, they thought that Jerry would be the first one voted off, right? And so, but they didn't want to shut the production of the show down. So they said, well, Jerry's going to go down to the stars. The company came to me and they said, you're going to host the shows while Jerry's gone. But don't worry, he's not going to be on it long and he'll be back and, you'll just host like a week or so. I said, okay. I go, what are you going to pay me? And they were like, well, pay you? What do you mean? And I go, well, I'm director of security. I'm not the host of Jerry Springer. And that kind of like set off a wildfire with the company because they're like, well, no, this is your. And I said, nah, man, I don't want any carrot. I don't want. I want something for this. And they did. And so I hosted, and I was super scared. Right, I was nervous because at this point, I was very involved in the show. I was number two on the show, but I never was the guy. So when you're the guy, it's a lot different than being second base.
Mhm.
And but it's not that hard, right? I didn't think, but so that first show I hosted, I probably was terrible, but Jerry ended up, he's a beloved figure. So
Mhm.
no matter what anybody thought, he'll be the first to vote up. I think he stayed on there for 7 weeks. He lasted a very long time. So we tape Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Tape 2 shows a day. So 6 shows a week times 7. I ended up hosting like 42 shows, and they rated really well. So the next season, Jerry came back and he's like, well, I could take Monday off and just have Steve do the shows. And I'd only have to work 2 days a week, and Steve can host one day a week. And I was like, great, because I got paid extra for every show I hosted. So it worked out great for Jerry because he got an extra day off. I made more money. And neither one of us thinking, okay, this is going to launch. There was no plan to get me my own show. But now a whole nother season of doing that, the ratings were always good. So somebody in NBC said, hey, let's give this guy a show. And then that's when the world exploded. And I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay, so you said, you thought, "Oh, it's not that hard." Then you discover it
It
is.
is. It's so hard.
It's so hard, and I don't
And
think people understand that,
yeah.
you know?
I still get this, Melissa. People, and it was a lot of my friends and people I knew, and they're like, I could do what you do. And I said, yeah, you can do what I do, but will anybody watch? That's the big difference.
Well, and can you do it well?
Right. Can you ask questions, this and that? But there's so much. You got to be light on your feet. You got to know when to ask the questions, timing, being smart and funny, or being serious. And there's a wide range of things you got to do. But again, I go, there's people much more talented than me, have much more charisma, better looking, all these things, and their shows didn't last a year. So whatever it is people like watch with me, they're going to watch me do it. And there's people way more famous than me that got shows before and after me, and I'm still standing after 19 years.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because people think, "Oh, it's so easy," and you're like, try it for a day.
Yeah, I mean,
Ain't so easy."
there's
Well, because you have to listen.
and it's and when you think about doing the show is one big piece of the puzzle, but it's going to all the affiliates and going to all the dinners and smoozing and advertisers, and they have to like you and they have to be invested in you. So there's just, and the first 3 or 4 years I had no life because I was just trying to get my show, going into season 2, going into season 3. That I was, even on non-tape days, I was doing interviews and flying here and flying there. My life was a living hell those first couple of years. It was terrible.
What about prep work?
I don't do any.
Now, that's what I had heard. Why do you not do prep work? Because I absolutely, especially on the red carpet and being live, major prep work, so it looks like you didn't do prep work.
Yeah. I
Who
honestly
made
don't do.
that decision to say we're sending you out there cold?
I think me and my wife came to that together because, when we got the show, they didn't tell us, okay, this is what the show is going to be about. They kind of said to me, you got your own show, go figure it out. Like they left it in our hands. So my wife and I sit down, like, what are we going to do? And my wife goes, hey, what are you good at? She goes, you're a policeman. You're a really good policeman. What we're going to do is we're going to take that Chicago policeman off the streets of Chicago and put him right on stage. And as a policeman, you get a call. My beat was 1443. Okay, 1443, go to 1222 West Division, speak to Miss Smith about this. Well, that's all the information you get. Then you go to 1222 West Division. I speak to Miss Smith. I got a limited amount of time. I start asking her questions. Bing, bing, bing. I'm extracting information, and then I have to come up with a resolution. And that's the same thing I do on the show. Okay, here's Yolanda. Hey, Yolanda, blah, 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 blah. Small amount of time, resolution. And the great thing was being a policeman and being in that type of concept of trying to resolve problems really transferred well onto the stage. And I want to react just like the people in the audience behind me. I want to react like the people at home. So it's more natural. It's a better feel for the show if I'm learning for the first time.
You realize that's very unusual.
we call it tightrope walking.
Yeah.
Because it's but we're so good at it now. In the beginning there was pratfalls, but now I'm really good at now after 19 years I'm very good at what I do, and it's a pretty well-oiled machine.
After 19 years, does anything surprise you?
I like to say no because all the things I saw in the Marines, everything I saw as a policeman, everything I've seen on Springer, my show, between Springer and my show, I've probably done close to 6,000 episodes. Um, but yeah, there's times that, and you just go, man, I never heard that before. Like it's crazy. So yeah, there's still stories that shock me.
Your show has been credited with raising major awareness. I mean, I think everyone forgets that you've been on for 19 seasons with issues about domestic violence, substance abuse. When someone pointed out to you that your show was resonating in a very elevated way, were you surprised?
I don't know if I was surprised. I don't even know if I ever thought about it really. But what for me the big difference was I when I was on Jerry Springer, it was the circus and it was craziness. And unfortunately, the people on the show got a really bad stigma because people would come up to me on the streets and they would say, "Hey, what trailer park did you find that people in?" And all stupid comments like that. Um, and I got to say, the people on Springer that I had interactions with, they were very nice people. They were just involved in crazy situations. But that's what I would get when we started our show and we started doing it with the police format, and even today, I get thousands of emails from mostly women. It's mostly women. We get some men, but um, that thanking me, saying, "Hey, I saw your show and I was being molested or I was in a domestic violence situation, and watching your show gave me the power to get out of these, or I stopped doing drugs because I watched your show." And those are powerful emails. And I my dad was a paratrooper in the army. He was a Chicago policeman. My dad was Superman to me, so I wanted to be like my dad. And I really loved being a policeman to help people. I'm not saying that just to say that. It was the best feeling in the world when you got somebody's stolen car back or you found Mrs. Smith's runaway daughter. It was a great feeling. It was a great feeling to get the bad guy that committed a robbery and put cuffs on him and, get him off the streets. Those were great feelings. And the same feeling I get now when I get these emails or somebody comes up to me in the street and says, um, Steve, and I went through a rough time with alcohol. When we moved to Connecticut from the Chicago, Connecticut, I went through a major depression. I drank too much. I got a DUI in 2018, and I stopped drinking cold turkey. I said never again. I don't want to ruin my life. And I just had to admit, drink is not a good thing for me, and I stopped. Well, I've spoken about it at length on my show and talking to people, and people like, man, Steve, when I listen to you speak about your own problems, that helped me.
Mhm.
And I say, hey, I'm glad. I wish I didn't have to go through that, but I did, and nothing you can do about it, but try to make yourself better. So it's a great feeling knowing that even though I haven't met these people, I've impacted their lives in a positive way.
Is there any topic you haven't tackled that you would like to focus on?
Yeah, baseball, but my wife's not gonna let me do baseball, shows. Sports and, again, I stay out of the production of the show. I really do. There's never a meeting with me in it. There's never, "Hey, what do you wanna do?" Now listen, I read papers every day. I'm on social media. I'll see stories, I'll clip it out, or I take a screenshot and I'll forward it to my wife. And maybe out of the 1,000 that I forward to her, we've done 5. But you know,
I love that your opinion is so
yeah,
taken so
yeah.
seriously.
So like, I'm not involved in the production of the show. So
I know, but the fact that you're like, "Hey, how about this?" And they're like, "Uh-huh, nice." Pat you
yeah,
on the head and move
yeah.
on.
So, and listen, with our show, there's like a million legal issues you have to deal with and all kind of things. And, because some guests are on probation and they can't come to the show. And like, there's just a million things that are involved. So I just stay out of their way and I show up for work and I do my thing, they do their thing, and everybody's happy.
You have 2 kids,
Yeah.
a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
Who's the tougher parent? Who's the I'm guessing I know the answer.
Yeah. It's my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a hard ass at work. I was a hard ass as a policeman. I was a hard ass as a talk show host. I don't want to come home and be a hard ass. So I was always the good dad, the cool dad. And my wife is the disciplinarian. She still is. My kids are in college, but when, they're slipping, she drops the hammer. And when they want something and they're not going to get it, then they come around and try to get to me. My wife only brings me in when really big guns are needed, and then I'll blow a fuse, and then everybody shuts down. But no, I'm not in the day-to-day disciplinarian. That's my wife.
So you're the one that they go to when they're like, "Dad,
Yeah,
could I get this? I need a new laptop."
yeah, exactly. Because I'm a softie with my kids, but my wife's not.
Yeah. See, I had the problem again in-house with my mother,
Yeah.
who I
By
think
the way, I
enjoyed.
gotta say, I love your mother. I was a big fan. I thought she was so cool. And it's funny, like I'm talking to you, like we said, we never crossed paths, but like I remember in the 80s, I was in the Marines and I was in my barracks and I'd have TV and your mom would always be on. And it's so funny that like thinking like, man, someday I'm gonna be interviewing with her daughter someday. It's just even that stuff blows my mind still.
What do you wanna do next? We know
Retire.
the show is gonna keep and do what? And
I
do what?
listen. I golf a lot. I golfed this morning. I work out. I came home. I worked out. I read a lot. I don't want to retire, but you're saying what's after this? And for me, nothing. I'm 61 years old. Uh, Jerry worked up until like 2 years before he passed away. Maury, thank goodness, he's 83, 84, 85, I think. And, he just retired a couple of years ago. I don't want to spend my whole life working. I really don't. I want to enjoy it. Me and my wife are very active. We live in Connecticut, which is, as you know, a beautiful area. My kids are in school now. I golf, I weightlift, we go for walks, we ride bikes. We have a place in Florida we love. So when winter starts coming, we're going to spend a lot of time in Florida. I have a lake house in Wisconsin that's close to Chicago, where everybody I know, I grew up with my family, they're all back there. So we're always kind of moving around Florida, Connecticut, Wisconsin, Florida, Connecticut, Wisconsin. So I'm pretty busy and I love working. I love doing my show. But once my show's over, I don't want to do anything else.
Really?
Yeah. It's funny because Jerry could never sit still. He can like, I'll grab a cigar and I sit on my pier and I look out at the lake and I don't do nothing. I don't have anybody there. It's just me and I'm loving it. More, now he's got a podcast. He was on air for TV and these guys want to stay in the limelight. I could disappear and you never have to hear from me again.
It sounds good until you get the first bill from the country club because my husband's an avid golfer and he was quote unquote semi-retired. And then one month he got the bill from the club and he doesn't drink. And he went, "Yeah, I'm spending too much time here." There is only so I just can't, I want to have you back on when you have that first bill that comes in and you're like, "Yeah, I need to find something else to
Yeah, but
do."
the not drinking thing does really cut the bills down pretty good.
Yeah,
Even
well,
talking dinner.
apparently he had his bill as high as when he drank without drinking. That is
Yeah.
too much time spent at the club.
No, well, one thing is I'm an old Polak, right? Like, so I've been very good with my money. I've never lived beyond my mean. Me and my wife were, in this business, you don't know how much time. So we're
Mm-mm.
like, oh, you can't buy that. You can't buy that. We're like socking away, socking away. So hopefully we'll be okay. And I'm sure we will. And I don't have any bills. Everything in my life is paid off and just been saving, saving, saving. And so hopefully that part will be good. But I mean, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do this, and if it's fun, and I could make a few bucks," yeah, I'm not going to say no to things if I enjoy it. Like, listen, I do the MLB Network a few times a year, the Major League Baseball Network, but it's in Secaucus, New Jersey, and a lot of times they want me to come and do it more often than I do. But like, it's so far, like, and then they want me to come like on a Friday where it's like 2 hours there and 2 hours back, and I'm like, nah, man, I don't want to do that.
Okay, diva.
Yeah.
Steve Wilkos, you are beyond charming. The 19th season is underway. Check your local listing and streamers for dates and times. Anytime you want to come on the show, you are 100% welcome. And also, I have made a huge mistake in my life, which you will understand, which is I am starting to take golf lessons. It is
Yeah, it's
all bad. All bad.
yeah, but golf is really hard. And I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and my dad was a policeman. Everybody's dads were cops and firemen and plumbers, and so nobody played golf when I was growing up. I moved to Darien, Connecticut. Everybody plays golf. Everybody's a member of a country club. So I've only been golfing probably seriously for like 10 years now, and I'm finally getting good after 10 years. I played sports and I did all kind of things growing up, so it's not like I'm not non-athletic. I'm athletic, but it took me 10 years and I'm still like, I golf with a guy that he was born and raised golfing, and he's great. I'm never going to beat him, but I enjoy it. I love it. And the competitive, and, you have this big social circle around golf. My whole life it's not just the golf, it's the social aspect of it.
It's a sickness.
It's a good sickness.
Yeah, well, I am not so happy that I am learning how to do this. Steve Wilkos, thank you so much. The 19th season of the Steve Wilkos Show is underway. Check your local listings and streamers for dates and times.
Thanks for having me on, Melissa.